Good morning, everyone. My name is Debbie Mann. I'm with Festivals and Events Ontario, and my co-host is
Marnie Lapierre. I'm with Festivals and Events Ontario and also Northern Events and Tourism Consulting.
wonderful. Thanks, Marnie. Thanks, everyone. This is the beginning of season 3 of Tuesday Talks with FEO. So thank you so much for joining us. This is, I think, our 4th edition of Festivals Helping Festivals. And today it's going to be about risk management. So we're pretty excited to have this conversation. We're glad you're joining us. And so let's set it off here. Oh, look, everybody. I welcome everybody who's just joining us. Janet, hi. Peter, welcome. Yeah, thanks everyone. So risk management, Marnie, I'm going to pass it over to you and we can take it from there.
Okay, this is one of my favorite topics when it comes to event management, because if you're covering this sector, this pillar of your event, that means you're planning for everyone to have a wonderful time and leave safely. And there's many aspects to that, as we all know, and some of the things we may not have thought about. So I've sat back and kind of reflected through all the wonderful learnings that I've taken on through some post-secondary, as well as some real life experience, just to give a definition of what I believe risk management is. It's where you as an organization minimize the event risks that could potentially occur, and that you're taking these steps to be proactive and avoiding as much as possible the negative outcomes that could happen. And there's a broad range under risk management. You know, we're very aware, I'm sure we all are, of the health and safety portion of it, where you've got people coming in and they need to access safely. Setup has to be done safely. Your staff, volunteers need to be trained for emergency measures, for safe execution of their tasks and duties. When it comes to moving equipment, what the protective personal equipment is that they're wearing, all of that, working with people who might be at risk at your event. But there's other sections of this as well, such as managing the reputation of the event, and that can stem from how you promote your event or get the information out to participants and stakeholders. Are you reaching them in the ways that they needed to be reached? Is your website accessible? Is your site accessible? Have you provided bio break stations that are accessible? So your porta potties, have you included those that have mobility issues? What does your terrain look like? And then, of course, the other portion of it is managing what could be happening in social media. We have seen festivals come under attack for miscommunication of what's happening at the festival, how to get to the festival, how the tickets are sold, how the tickets are reimbursed. You're managing that portion of the reputation, which can put your festival also at risk. And then there's the modules that you're using for training for your events, as well as, are you following the required safety requirements, whether it's through the private venue you're using or a municipal venue. You need to be working with them. So in a very big nutshell, there's a lot going on with risk management, and I thought this would be a great opportunity, since we have so many that are joining us today and have been joining us throughout 3 seasons, that we can share what our experiences are, what our challenges are, those kind of burning questions. So that's what I'm hoping that we can get the flow of information going. And if we don't have the answers today, maybe we can get those a little bit later down the road. So Debbie, do you want to lead with the first question?
Sure. So the first question we have is communication with targeted audience. Your safety protocols in your website and social media available in an accessible format? So that was the first question we came up with. And we'd like to hear from you, and to Marnie, maybe you can kick it off, and then see what the rest of the audience has to say about it.
Okay. I know I've worked with a few organizations, not just municipal, where it came down to the website being accessible, providing that option for people that have visual issues. Is there a way that you can make your website with a click of a button, if you haven't done it already, where they can enlarge the text, or is there an audio version that they can access if there's a little bit of a problem there? Even with anything that you would be distributing through social media, if you have those beautiful posters that you've spent hours with graphics, and not also including text along underneath in the comment section, or as a attachment to the actual graphic, so that it can explain to those that access the internet with hearing assistance, where they may not be able to see the actual graphic, but the computer or their device that they're using will read the text back to them. Is that something that anybody has started, done, successes, challenges? I would love to know. And we're in the process with one of our organizations up here in the north, looking at what our options are. So is there anybody that they're kind of willing to share that part of it?
I do know a few, I think it was in season 2, we did have somebody come on who was specialized in accessibility, online accessibility. So I don't know if anybody took advantage of that, but it was interesting to hear all the things that they do. And she has hired a whole bunch of people who have either hearing disability or visibility disability, that physical disabilities, to support and to be able to really get into the minutia of your website. And I know that's something that I think is well, fairly new to us, but yeah, just wondering if you've taken a look at that, or have you had any comments on it? Dave, did you have your hand up? No? Okay.
No, I mean, I can jump in on, not so much on the website and the accessibility stuff, but just on the communication angles of it is, and a lot of people don't think of it until they're in a crisis, is, having a communication plan, and who manages the plan, and who are the quote unquote spokespeople for the organization. And I think it's important, not just from a management control, but you want to have a consistent, concise message going out. You don't want your ED saying one thing and a member of another committee saying something else, and then another volunteer saying something completely different. So you want to try to manage your communication flow and who does it. And I find a lot of times, especially with the media these days, is watching what the media is writing and how they're writing it, because I know in this period coming out of COVID, and I'm getting a lot more media requests, and they're all coming from the same angle, and that's the negativity of, things not happening, or ticket sales falling off and people not getting refunded. And it's easy to get caught up in their minutia, and instead of trying to sort of change them around and change our whole outlook on the events world, is, like everybody else, we're just getting back into it. Yes, there are going to be mistakes, but let's accentuate some of the positives that are happening. People are starting to come out back to your events. So I think that messaging and having that clear, concise spokesperson for your messaging. And as you're doing that, I mean, you've also got to think of whatever comes out of your mouth, no matter what's before it or what's after it, can be spun. So you really have to be careful with what you're saying and how you're saying it. And, kind of think in sound bites, like, oh, yeah, that's something they might be interested in using. So, kind of make clear, concise points like that. And I think that's the importance of that plan. And like that, and like anything else in the risk management world, and this is a mistake a lot of us make, is risk management's not like a one-time thing that you do with your organization. It's a living, breathing document that should be reviewed at least once a year. I would suggest maybe once a quarter, and having all of those people that are aligned or involved in that risk management plan, making sure that they're communicating it to their teams on, what their roles and responsibilities are. Because if something's not owned, it's not looked after, and it just fall between the cracks. So you really have to think of the risk management tool as a living, breathing document that needs constant revision and constant looking at and updating.
Absolutely. And there's training on that. We've had people come in who at our conference training you on those different aspects, right, Dave? It was Warren Weeks, I think, who did it. And so it's something else to think about.
Yeah, Warren does a good media training on how to deal with media and how to answer questions. And a lot of times instead of just coming out honestly and saying, I don't really have that information right now, let me check on you. Some people go no comment. Well, no comment opens you up to, are you hiding something, or is there something in the background? Whereas being honest and open, that's the first I'm hearing about this. Let me do some investigation and get back to you, and make sure you follow up if you do say that. So, don't be afraid to say you don't know. In some instances with follow-up, it's a lot better than no comment.
It's true. And ensuring that everybody on your team is all on the same page, that, the volunteers are fully aware that if media shows up, because they do, sometimes you're not expecting them, and we'll find the first person in that bright yellow volunteer shirt to talk to, make sure that they're well aware that they should be directing them to the nearest senior volunteer management, or if they happen to know who the committee people are, so that it's addressed correctly, because that can go south very quickly. Definitely.
And also, Deb, just back to the conference, we've had Peter Ashwin a couple of times, and we've got a really good risk management tool on our website that it's a pay for play type of thing, but it's a good deal for members. And Peter will usually put some one-on-one time into that with your organization. So it's a really good tool to walk you through what you should be thinking about. And at the end of the course, it sort of spits out for you your risk management template filled in, and gives you a really good starting point to go from. So I think Jay has those the link to that for anybody that's interested in it. And we will work with you if you've got bigger teams and stuff like that to set up some special things. We've done that with 3 or 4 of our members already. So have a look at that program. If you don't have a good plan, or you're not sure where to start, it's broken up into sections, and Peter walks you through a really good process of how to get it started and how to keep it on track.
And I saw Janet Celery here. She's still here. I think I lost her. Oh. Well, is Janet, are you still here? Okay, well, we have something with Janet too, who is the Event Safety Alliance Canada group. So that's another tool that you can use, another person that you can access and get information from on that.
And I can speak from experience. I've worked with both. I've done the ERMS Global Risk to Resilience, the Fundamentals of Risk Management with Peter. It was a fantastic on your own pace course. And I've also worked with Janet in creating a protocol for opening events during times of COVID for our municipality. And that is a document that we've shared with other event organizers in the community, because when events were starting to roll out again, they were a little tentative about how they were going to do it. So it was great to work with her on that level and use some of the expertise that she has. So recommend both if you have that opportunity with your organization to delve into. Well worth the time.
Absolutely. Does anybody have any feedback, any experience on this that they'd like to share with us? Because this is a session of a round table where we want to hear from you. Damien put something in here about a resource for enabling change, accessibility for the performing arts, and he's given a link to that. Thank you, Damien. And Kyle said that the accessibility expert last session, he felt that there was a deadline to make their websites accessible. So does anybody have any comments or any feedback on that?
I think there is a deadline, but it depends on the size of your organization. And sometimes it goes to how many employees you have, which you know, a lot of us don't have a lot of employees. Now it's different if you're in a municipality and things like that, but I mean, your municipality should be on top of all of that for you as well, and leading you through that process. But, you know, for a lot of the smaller things, I think it's not a have to do. It's you know, it's certainly a good thing to do. What I was going to just jump in on too is, you know, risk management's much more than just your day of and week of the event. It's things like, is your database backed up in your office? Are your computer files backed up? You know, if you and I know a couple of years ago we got hacked, and somebody got in and, you know, took our system down. And, you know, fortunately we had a good plan, and our IT person was able to rebuild our system, and we were back up and operating in like less than 48 hours, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But without that, you know, off-site management of your resources that you don't always think about until you're in the situation, you know, you could lose all of your history, all of your file keeping and everything. So it's really important to make sure that those fundamentals are taken care of. And I mean, when you get into bigger organizations, it's, you know, if there was a fire here, what would we do? Where would we operate out of? And how would we do that? And who should be connected? And how would we go about rebuilding that processes and everything like that? So it's really looking at your business from the inside out, you know, what needs to be taken care of. Same with your day of event and coming up to your event and going outside of your event. And, you know, in a lot of different situations where we talk about employees, we can all substitute volunteers in there, because I think for us, it's really important to keep our volunteer knowledge. And, you know, you lose a couple of good key volunteers over the course of a couple of years, and it can really throw a monkey wrench into your planning and into your events. And I think that's what a lot of us coming out of COVID are finding out is, you know, some of us did a really good job of staying connected with our volunteers throughout the 2 years of COVID, and some of us didn't do quite as good a job. And I think we're seeing that, you know, the retention of volunteers, and, you know, a 2-year hiatus gives a lot of people that sort of were on the fence and not getting excited anymore a reason to jump off. So you've got to keep those volunteers engaged and stuff like that too. So I mean, that's all part of your risk protocol as well.
Thanks, Dave. Adrian, sorry, Marnie.
Oh, that's okay. I was just about to say Adrian. Adriana.
I absolutely agree with Dave. So like, I kind of jumped into Thamesville this year with my experience from working with Connie for 9 years with Retrofest. And I kind of came into a group that doesn't have a risk management, has nothing planned. It is very much a small community. It is there is no actual staff. It's all just a group of committee and local people that kind of come together to do it. So this year's been a real learning curve for them. They had a brand new committee. So as Dave had mentioned about volunteers, that also includes connections between your committee members. So they ended up starting with pretty much a brand new committee who had no experience. So that became a lot of things, a lot of knowledge quickly learned for them, including all this risk management, what was required even from like your volunteer policies, so such as feeding and providing water and everything else. So it's a slow process, but I find one that's very required. And like, there's times that you gotta be that bad guy, as much as we don't like the word, but there's times that it's kind of required to say, no, we can't do that because it's a risk. Or one thing we started doing was, we have a lot of where we're at, the firefighter departments and stuff are volunteer. So we actually started involving them in our daily meetings and everything like that to get their perspectives of certain things. And we actually involved them and their groups and organizations into our event. So it was nice to have that, because even though that risk management of fire and everything else didn't fall on us, because like tractors, lawnmowers, everything else fire, they were able to kind of take over that. They actually brought their tankers and stuff and had a constant flow of water on site for their activities that could potentially, like anything that had like straw or hay nearby. They were always making sure it was wet for us and everything else. So they kind of, you learned very fast about keeping everything going. So, and then social media. I'm working on the website, but because that event and organization was so small and I guess you could say not officially connected, even though they had big numbers, like they were easily 10 to 20,000 people that would attend. They were never an actual connected group to anything because they never had staff. They never, it was just something the community threw together. So it's interesting to see the difference between like comparing how Connie is with Retrofest to a smaller group and a smaller organization.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And just jumping in on what Adriana was saying, you know what, it doesn't really matter the size of your organization or the number of people. I think the important elements of a plan are the same, whether you've got, 10 people running an event or you've got 1,000. I mean, those principles are all the same, right? You go through those processes. And the idea of bringing people together, I think, is a great idea and something that Oktoberfest has done really well over the years. And, they every year prior to the festival, they have what they call an events safety meeting. And they bring in the chief of police, the fire chiefs, they bring in the people from the AGCO, anybody that has a connection to the festival in some element with safety. They bring in all of their security people and all of the different fest halls, and they sort of go through every element of what may or could happen. And, the police give good updates on counterfeit and what to look for, or they'll talk about different trends in the community and what you may or may not see at your festival. And so I think including those people, not only are you doing your due diligence, and for your insurance company, it's a great check off. Before the event, we met with the AGCO, we met with police, we met with fire, we met with security, we went through a plan together. Aside from due diligence, it's a good learning point for everybody. And it's better to have a relationship with all of those people in front of a problem than never having talked to them and then have to answer to a problem. So, in be inclusive in your planning and all that stuff.
How are other people dealing with everything? I mean, there's some big events, there's some municipalities here, there's some smaller events. So I'm just curious. Any feedback, any input?
I'd just like to say, I'm going to pull on Catherine Wilson from the city of Thunder Bay, because I just a couple of weeks ago had the fortune to work with the city of Thunder Bay for an event that happened over a 2-day period. And what an excellent example of working with a municipality it was, because the special event permit that you obtained through the city really covered a lot of factors that you would incorporate into your risk management plan. And obviously Thunder Bay has a lot of events that happen, and I'm sure that it is a document that came out of necessity, much like the other permits that you would get from a municipality. But it was probably one of the most intensive ones that I had a takeaway from. And it was a great example of something to use for an organization that may not have instituted a real formal risk policy. This particular one was really great to work with, and was interesting. And I'm just wondering if any of the other municipalities have something in place. Not every municipality is in the business of hosting events, so it might be something new or something that hasn't been used. So just a little curious about that. And sorry about that, Catherine, if I put you on the spot, but it was a great experience.
No, that's okay. And I just want to follow up on that having a very thorough application form that includes, especially when it comes to electrical or locates or food trucks, just adding a lot more verbiage to give you to give the client who's applying the chance to really think about each component thoroughly, and it will save them time down the road. should they like, oh, I didn't think of that, or I didn't see how that would apply to me. It is really word heavy. So I also get pushback sometimes where it's like, oh, this is such a very intensive, very full application. It's a lot to go through. But it also makes you think. And at the very end, the most important is why I chimed in here, your final checklist at the very, very end. It's an active checklist for that client to remember all those things. There's so many components. And if you drop one and now last minute you're trying to jam it through. So it's trying to be proactive and it's trying to make you think. So word heavy, but if you're okay with reading, if you're okay with doing the work, it's okay. So it could be a benefit. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Danielle, you had something.
Yeah, thanks. I'm with the City of Toronto. I work in the event support unit. So we help, there's a couple of us in the department, and we help mostly the really large events navigate through city services in the city. And in the City of Toronto, you don't actually take out an event permit to host an event. It's an event is sometimes the culmination of a number of permits. So whether it's a street closure or a permit to host an event in a park, et cetera. So we find, but we actually find that keeping track of events and who's doing what in the city is done through a component of the application to host any event anywhere, which is the Emergency Action Plan, or EAP. So when an event organizer wants to host an event, and I believe the cutoff is like 200 people or more, whether it's in a park, whether it's a block party, event organizers are required to submit an emergency action plan that really details the big components of the event. So where it's happening, which major streets are involved, intersections, areas of the city, et cetera. And just like I believe Catherine said, it forces event organizers to really think about the logistics of their event, but also the responses to emergencies that they might have to engage. So we ask them for their risk management plan, and that's reviewed by all emergency city services as well as a number of other city services. So that's distributed. It's like a portal. It's distributed to a number of people, and we all get to look at it. The key component of that is our Office of Emergency Management, which coordinates emergency services all across the city, not just for events, but also for just whenever stuff happens in the city. They have the contact information of the event organizer. So that's really important for us, for that Office and Emergency Services to have that contact information, whether an emergency is happening for or in that event or around it, that we now need to get in contact with them and say, hey, we have to block off a street or something is happening, we need to let them know that. So I just wanted to add that little tidbit of information about Toronto.
Danielle, I'm curious, Toronto's a pretty big machine. Is it all automated, or just
with
curious?
regards to the
The
submitting that form?
Yeah.
We're getting there. There's, I'm actually 2 months into this job at the city, so I have fresh eyes, but I've also seen a lot, and I'm taking notes. What I have noticed is, because there are a lot of departments and so many people, and some of the departments are really segmented by jurisdiction, and then or like area, and then there's a number of staff members in each area. So it's just like a web of humanity that's trying to all organize events. So I find that there's a little bit of siloedness going on. However, there is a great desire to have more like automated communication system, where perhaps all the permits are submitted through one portal rather than sort of two different departments, and more of a one-stop shop that way. So I think something that is really being investigated is what technology is suitable for that, because there's a lot of either project management or municipality management, arts administration kind of software out there that, you have to find the right one that everybody can use and get on board with, and then train everyone. But so some of it automated, some of it not quite there, but definitely moving in the direction to have it automated. It would just make communication a lot more seamless.
Perfect. Dave had a comment, and
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of great points, Daniel. And the thing is, in Ontario, there's 441 municipalities or something like that, and probably there's not many that do it the same in each city. So when we're dealing with promoters that are going from city to city, we quite often, well, here we had to do this, this, and this. Here we had to do this, this, and this. And I think Ottawa has a really good example of an events department that runs really well. And their model is sort of, if I go in there with an event, they give me a person that sort of manages with me the process through the municipality of whether it's street closures or off-duty police or what's needed. They become your spokesperson. Other municipalities you go to, like in the municipality of Waterloo, you've got to go through all of those different departments on your own. So, you've got to deal with traffic, you got to deal with police, if you're not really sure and you miss something in there. So I think for municipality people on here, it's great to have, we talked about that checklist or who you should be talking to if there's not somebody at the municipality advocating on your festival's behalf. Find out at least everyone that you need to touch in that process to make sure that all of your permits are in place and everything's aligned properly. The other thing is, don't be afraid to work with your insurance people, because it's in their best interest that you have a good good risk management plan as well. And I know some of them will offer discounts if everything is checked off and done properly. So use all the resources available to you, and they're able to give you a few more insights into what you should be looking out for and different trends and stuff like that they're seeing across their platforms that you may not have thought about yet. So really be inclusive, and like everything else, the key to a good risk management plan is communication and making sure that everybody knows the details, and those that are leading certain segments that they're communicating through their teams, and that everybody knows in advance what the protocol is if there's an issue, because it's great to have plan A, B, and C, but what if we have to go to D, or just knowing who to go to and who leads the different departments. I think that's key for everything as well. So communications, like everything else, is key.
I know that with Ottawa as well, they did automate it so that everything that you could put your request in, and there was a very interesting process that they went through on that a few years ago. So that's interesting. That was a real interesting conversation with Dolores when she was in that role. Anything else? Is there anything else that anybody has to offer? I saw that there's been a couple of comments in here where Deb Lewis, Deb, where are you from? City Events, I think you're from. And I just went through the City of Toronto permit process for a community event in the park for the first time. And she found the requirements useful, even though there were more steps in the process. So that was great. And Kyle just, he put in here where their road closure was denied just a few days before. So, that's, again, how do you communicate all that? And what's the process of that when, was the event canceled, Kyle, or was it just your part of it was canceled?
So for myself, I wasn't on the planning end. I was just booked to appear as a performer,
Right.
But the entire event had to be canceled outright. And I was very surprised. So for myself, I was stuck with an open weekend at the last minute. I'm not sure why the road closure permit was denied, but we found out only a few days before. And unfortunately, there was, there was no alternate plan. There was nothing that they could do. So the entire festival had to be canceled outright.
Wow.
So yeah, just the importance of building those relationships and working with your municipal and your emergency services. I mean, I'm sure Danielle can speak to it as well. Is like they're a great resource to help walk you through the process. And as Dave was mentioning too, is like having those checklists are invaluable to think about the things that maybe you hadn't considered. You know, those things that can not only help you get the permit, but help you plan ahead for something that you may not have known that you had to plan for.
And Dave also mentioned, Marnie and I had on here, you know, what does your insurance cover? So Dave tapped on that particular question too. Have you been working with your insurance company? Because they have requirements as well. And that's part of your safety training modules. So Marnie, do you want to go ahead on that one? And
Yeah, I have also experience with situations regarding the venues and insurance issues that can come up. Whereas an event may be fully covered for something simple, or in our minds, simple as inflatables, a venue's insurance may not permit it. And if you're not communicating exactly what your footprint is going to look like at the venue, these things can cancel each other out. In 2017 or 2018, this actually happened in our community where there was an event going on and the organizer had insurance to cover the inflatables, but the venue didn't. And it was a week out from the event that the insurance for the venue, which apparently was going to oversee the event's insurance, was not going to allow it. And inflatables are a huge part of the demographic of the attendees at the event. The very younger youth crowd always made great use of them. And there was a lot of very quick emergency phone calls back and forth and getting the two insurance companies themselves to discuss and eventually cover it. And it was all based on a situation that had happened down in the US where the inflatables were not tied down correctly and kids went tumbling, but not intentionally. So it's really important that all aspects of your event is communicated with the venue, because the venue is in the business of renting out the space, and the onus is on the person using that space to provide the information of exactly how it's being used. And sometimes you may have somebody who's new in the front lines of that venue communicating with the organizer, and they may not be fully aware of what those insurances for the venue cover. So even if you've had 10 conversations with this individual in the past, and even though you've had that event at that venue 10 times in the past, it's really important that those little check marks are done, because that can make or break the success of your event. And I know that there's probably been others in similar situations, and that's, I think, is part of the training for a committee member who's handling that, or a staff member who's handling that. And then devolving into that is the safety training modules that we have for staff, volunteers, and suppliers. I know we alluded to that a couple of episodes back. It's a good time to dust off those binders and take a look at what your policies and procedures are. If anybody has done that, what have you experienced going forward for your event, if you've held it yet this year? Some may not have held it, and there's still time, but I also see that Kyle has his hand up. So go ahead, Kyle.
Hi, Marnie.
Hi.
Just on the note of insurance as well, I think it's worth mentioning, if you haven't hosted your event in a few years, just that the landscape may have changed. For myself on the supplier end as well, I've had the same insurer for many years, but now events that are asking for additional insured as on a certificate of insurance, now I'm finding that I have to very specifically mention what activities I'm going to be doing. Whereas before it was just kind of a blanket policy. You're covered for the year and they know what you're doing. Now they're asking very specifically, what are you doing at that event? So things and requirements may have changed. If you're requiring, insurance from suppliers, working with them early because their insurer may not be around anymore or may not be providing that insurance as well. So just starting those conversations early, working ahead, planning ahead, having solutions in place is a really great idea. Always planning ahead.
Dave.
Yeah, just jumping onto some stuff Kyle was talking about, you know, for those instances in that festival that had to cancel because of the street permits, you know, it's one thing to update your risk management plan, but also for critical paths, you know, as you run into incidents, make sure your critical path for next year is updated and those incidents are noted, because like losing key personnel or key volunteers, if you've got no paperwork or no flow of how things happen, that whole history is gone. So, I mean, I think that's part of the importance of having a really good critical path. And it's not to diminish the value of volunteers or employees, but if all of a sudden somebody is gone and there's no industrial knowledge of that event or that planning and strategic timelines, at least you've got that critical path reference to go back to. And, you know, hopefully it's detailed enough that anybody walking in can pick it up and play on it from there. So I think all of those points important to not only update your risk management plan, but your critical paths and all of the different things that happen throughout the course of your business.
Very true. Very true. We are almost at the 1:45 mark. Are there any questions that anybody has? Oh, wait, no. I see Adriana has a comment in the chat. We are having that issue for the coming year. Luckily, we're close to the municipality, so they changed the date of construction to allow retro to still happen in the normal location. All other Chatham events cannot happen at the park. It usually does because of road construction. Timmins has been under the same duress with one of our more popular parks as well. That can definitely affect how you're going to flow with that event. And whole new site changes can really make things a little difficult when it comes to your risk management, because it could be an event venue that you've not used before and whole new considerations, even as simple as where you're going to stake those great big large tents. And there goes the locates conversation. Oh, definitely. Are there any other questions that you might have that you were thinking about before joining with us today, that you know, going forward, planning for your next event or the one that you have planned for this year, that, you know, perhaps some of the group could chime in on with their own experiences? Or even the municipalities?
Nothing. I see some one or two big events in here, and I don't know if they'd like to chime in with any of their experiences, but don't want to call them out. And municipalities. All right. Oh, Adriana.
It's kind of already happened, but just kind of also learn from what happened this year at Retrofest and what we've been dealing with. Also, look at the risks outside of it and what you can deal with after. So for those that don't know, there was an accident in town the same weekend, and now a lot of people are blaming Retrofest and the festival as a whole. So that's something as a whole we've dealt with and been working on and overall been working through. So just something to potentially add of like how to your risk management, how you're going to deal with those, because a lot of that is social media and that goes towards your reputation and everything else. So just kind of add in, because as much as the communities do like having and bringing business and people over, there is that slight line that they don't always, like a lot of the people that do communicate and feel that frustration and that voice it on social media don't see the background, don't see what we do. So like just kind of, as much as you want to say like, I mean, we couldn't do the normal cruise route because of this, and this. One being we would have had to Dukes Hazard it across the river because of the construction. But just to kind of something to potentially add is like how you're going to deal with the potential backlash if something were to happen at your event on your social media or on overall media outside of it.
And
So.
and that just brings up, Dave, I see you're unmuted there, but it just also brings up to make sure that you've got the proper insurance that's going to cover things like that. I'm just thinking of an event that happened quite a few years ago, a really popular event that ended up having a really tragic outcome, and it went on for years from a legal perspective. So just make sure that you have the right insurance for your event, for your board, for everything.
Yeah, for this one, it was more like a normal car hit other cars. So it wasn't directly attached to us, but because of the event bringing extra traffic into town from the cruises and everything else, that's kind of where it came from. So dealing with that backlash that technically isn't currently you, but people that don't know how your event is in that background, kind of how you're going to deal with that.
Right.
So.
And Dave, did you have a question? I just want one other thing. How do you, because I think risk management too is, how do you deal with your community when you're putting an event on? Do you include them? Do you let them know what's going on? Do you what do you, not just the community like the municipality, but the neighborhood that you're going to be in, if there is a neighborhood? So for example, there's where I live here in Kitchener, I'm beside this park that never had events in it, and a few before the pandemic had a huge event, and so which the park borders, of course, homes, and the event was going to go on for quite a while, like until midnight anyway, because of the time bylaws. So is that something you take into consideration for your risk management to make sure that your neighborhood is on board with it, or at least made aware of it? Just another point to add.
And Deb, I was going to jump in with just being on top of current events and reading, I think we put out a very good newsletter. Compliments to Jay and the team on that, IFEA, and just watch what's happening around different communities and different jurisdictions. And, I remember when that idiot drove up on the sidewalk in Toronto and killed a number of people. Sad situation. But my first thought was, oh my God, that's going to be another cost that we're going to have to bear the burden of, is, protecting large groups of people from people driving into a crowd. It never happened before, but it happened. And now all of a sudden, and I think all of us are experiencing it with street closures and large gatherings, is you've got to think about that. I mean, the shooting in Las Vegas, how often had a festival in the past thought about snipers on rooftops or out of hotel windows? And, so all of these different things that happen in large gatherings and just all over the place, I think it's important, and the onus is on all of us is to think, and, as you're watching the news and dissecting it, is, that happened in this area or territory, and that could very easily transfer over to us. And, if something like that happened, what would we do and how would we handle it, and be progressive on it? And, as soon as you see it, start developing a thought pattern and a process that you're going to bring everybody through.
Danielle. Yeah, and don't think it won't happen to you, because that would be fear in your head.
Yeah, what strikes me is just, I think event organizers, and I also come from an event organizer background, so I kind of straddle the two worlds of municipality and event organizer. And one thing that I was thinking of just listening to this is, as event organizers, whether it's a massive event or a small event, you really need to be, from a risk management point of view and from a planning point of view, just really in tune to the community, to your immediate community, your neighbors, those trends that you were talking about. Know what your demographics are of your attendees. How do human behavior, psychology, how do people behave in large groups? How do the people who come to your event behave in large groups? What do they want? What do they need? What does the neighborhood need? And then what are all those, oh gosh, awful worst case scenarios, like the van attacks, like the snipers, like all of those things, from my experience, processing all of those what ifs and putting it down in that risk management plan of all the awful things that could happen. And it's something as awful as one of those, loss of life situations, or, we get shortchanged radios, we needed 80 and we got 60, it's all those things of what could happen, and then how we all react, how the team reacts to it, and how that's communicated. So I think the landscape of events has really, really changed. Human beings have changed as well. And I think going through those risk management plans and those policies and giving them a freshen up, so tedious to do and so time consuming, but so valuable to do those, because things really, really have changed and the risks have changed. Even just thinking about the city of Toronto itself, the literal landscape has changed. So what event organizers maybe had to worry about pre-pandemic and, the 2018-19 years, a lot has happened construction-wise and just literal landscape-wise that now it can affect their event. They need to communicate with the city as much as possible, like we've been saying, all along. Make sure you have those good relationships. So, yeah, I think it's event organizers have a lot of work on their hands to do that, but so worth it. And if I was an event producer, I would definitely be, like you said, dusting that policy binder off and seeing where some changes need to be made because of what's going on.
Thanks, Danielle. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Kyle.
I actually just wanted to mention as well, there's a really great documentary on Netflix right now about the revival of Woodstock. And I don't know if this was mentioned earlier, but
saw it.
Yeah, so I don't know if you had the serious stress dreams that I had, because I watched all the episodes in one night and that was a mistake. But it's actually it's a really great reminder, because it's a day-by-day breakdown of just the things that were ignored and how things compounded. And like Danielle was saying, then how that impacted the psychology, and how the psychology of people had changed from, who may have attended from the first Woodstock to, the
solid waste management.
I was triggered. I saw it. I was triggered. It was wild. It was an incredible documentary just from an events point of view. People don't notice the garbage cans until they're all overflowing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? I actually even went to a couple of events this summer where on a street closure, the garbage cans that were being used were the existing ones. So planning on using existing infrastructure, but not planning on the increased traffic for a road closure. It's just certain things, or again, changed usage, where if you have tents in front of things, how does that change accessibility if people can't get to the intersection bump outs with a wheelchair, or, just all these different things, planning ahead. But yeah, that documentary is, I think, Jay's got it linked there. Thanks, Jay. Definitely worth checking out if risk management is something that you have to consider.
Yeah, and I will say that if you, as event planners, you may cringe and not sleep at night after that movie. So just saying. Is there anything else? Any other burning comments, questions? Thank you so much, Marnie. Do you have anything else that you want to add to that?
I just want to thank everybody for chiming in today. I think it's very important that we share the knowledge that we've all gathered over the years and through the various events that we've all been involved with, because it helps create a safer environment for everyone going forward when we host these events, when we're planning them, and trying to cover as many bases as we can. It's not always possible, but by engaging each other and the entities that we work with to put this on, I think definitely will elevate the quality of the events that we're all looking to put on. And I know every time that I log in here to sit on one of these sessions, I'm walking away with multiple papers of notes that I'm learning from you, and I appreciate that in your time, and I appreciate Debbie and Dave your time as well, and Jay putting these together, because this is the time when we're all sitting back and getting ready to write those reports for all that wonderful government funding that came out, and starting the planning for next year. So if you haven't caught the previous sessions, please do so. And if you have questions coming out of those, or if you're a little shy to post some today, please get a hold of us, and we can share with the group and get some answers back for you. So again, thank you very much for your time and your sharing today. It's really important to the industry.
Thanks, Marnie, and thank you everyone for joining us and participating. Next week, we have our Supply and Demand hosted by Kyle Sipkins, and it's going to be with Richard Anderson from SmartServe, and he's going to be talking about recertification in SmartServe. And then the following week, we have our Tuesday Talks with FEO. This is going to be hosted by Dave and Tina Myers, our new president of our board, and talking about where FEO is headed in the future. So we hope you will join us. Thank you so much for this. We appreciate you, and just you being here, and your contribution helps us be better. So thank you. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week.